I wanted to offer one comment and just see if anybody had a reaction. So one of the interesting things that a journalist runs into constantly is this question of independence and perhaps the lack of an agenda. So much of science communication takes place in the context of an agenda. A researcher, a university attempting to tout their work, a lab attempting to tout their work, a foundation attempting to tout their work. And while there's many examples of spectacularly well done science communication in those venues, what's often lacking, of course, is any kind of outside context, criticism, or comment. And I'm curious, is this an issue that has come up for any of you in other words, the idea that the public deserves often a balanced picture, that if somebody's saying this is the greatest thing since sliced bread, somebody else might come back and say, well, actually, this may not be so great, or there's some social implications here we should be thinking about in terms of the broader breakthroughs. Are this issue of balance, does this ever come up in your thinking? I guess we can move on from that. Okay, go for it. Go ahead, Kay.
Well, actually, it does come up, and that we have project or research or institution-based models for science communication. But what's kind of underdeveloped is an infrastructure for broader communication about science, big science, or the overall scientific enterprise. So that's lacking. So lacking that broader context, then you are left with these individual communications efforts that maybe we're not well equipped to process because we don't have the evaluative framework. So sometimes we wish, for scientific formal communication, we have the peer-reviewed journal process. There's that superstructure that you evaluate, individual research findings and put them in the context of, worthwhile, not worthwhile, tested, not tested, etc. We don't have that for science communication, and maybe that's fine. It's just, it has to be because that's the way it is. I'm not sure that there are ways in which we can move beyond that framework. So it does place more of a burden on us as people communicated to be able to better evaluate, what is being communicated to us.
David, in the environmental world, I think that we would often see science communications as trying to bring forward ideas and knowledge that are not being adequately represented, for example, in the climate debate. So that doesn't mean that we're trying to promote more balanced information as such, but rather trying to make the mechanisms like journalism work well by providing additional information that isn't being talked about.
I think, Kai, you said exactly what I was going to say, which is that often in the foundation world and in our field, I feel like we're often funding attempts to bring some balance to civic dialogues on the issues that we care about, and that's often a challenge. So I think what Kai was saying is it's so important to be helping the grantees and organizations that we work with, the agencies that we partner with, to base actions on the broad spectrum review of science, instead of starting with your agenda and then finding the science that backs up your agenda. And I think too often we veer towards the latter, and it's really important for our foundation, for Packard, for many that we work with and partner with, that we start with the science and use that to inform policies or actions that we might recommend.
Any other thoughts from panelists? Dennis?
Oh, I thought someone was going to say something. Well, let me give a museum perspective, because this is an interesting area, because we get visitors who come in all the time, and this issue of balance always tends to come up, especially by fundamentalists who complain when we deal with evolution. We had a big whales exhibit and talked about the evolution of whales, and they were irate, wrote notes to our board, that type of thing. So and so it comes back to this issue of whatever we do has to be based upon the science. We're not going to do anything to try and balance it. And I think this has been a problem with journalism as a science writer myself. Personally, the idea that you have to give some sort of weight to both sides just because that's the way it is. And of course, if you don't know the science well, you feel that that's the only way to go. It's really important to not give equal weight, especially on things like that are way out of bounds. So I have to admit, and that's what everybody said, that's based on the science. As long as you have what's good scientific principles, then we feel we can stand on that and put off that minority opinion or smaller opinion.
We're not really looking at that issue because I think it's transcended by the much more fundamental issue of there's scarce resources for the NIH. And so I put it in the context of, John's talk of the history of science communication to say we, in the 2010s, are in a point of history. The NIH is facing a very challenging moment right now. Not just with the communication, but with being able to continue to fund research, to keep the United States in a leadership role in biomedical research. It's a challenging time. And so it's an opportunity to start bringing some really critical and innovative thinking about communications. I'm talking about in the context of NIH. I think some of that is going on. I think it's been, the fiscal situation has thrust it. So in a way right now, I think the NIH leadership is really reacting more to those challenges than, they don't have the luxury to pursue some certain agendas they might otherwise pursue if we're in a different financial situation.
But let me ask you on that score, how real from your perspective as a Hill staffer is this idea that if the public just understood more about what agencies do in the R&D sphere, there would be more political support for sustaining those budgets?
Well, it's part of the problem is we're in a part of a larger picture, which is the very dire financial straits of our federal government. So that's really sort of the overarching circumstance. So yes, of course, if the public better understands or sees the benefits of research and development, yes, you're going to build support. But right now, we're in a really very, very tough financial situation across the board. It's across the board. It's not just NIH. It's everywhere in the federal government. So, right now, I think the issue is more about how, if we can get ourselves on a good path forward in terms of our budget situation, then you can start, once you're in a better financial situation, then you can start really focusing much more about building public support for that or being able to do more on that. I mean, you may be able to do more now. I mean, you can start having discussions about the limited resources you have now, how you can spend that more wisely, how you can be smarter about it. That's a conversation I think that's taking place. I hope it's taking place. I hope that's the kind of conversation that that analysis that our inquiry is going to facilitate over at NIH, but it may be going on. And by the way, the NIH may be wanting to look at the other scientific research agencies to see how they're handling things. You know, they They're not necessarily spending money the way NIH spends money on communication. And again, as I said, NIH and the various centers and institutes just over time have accumulated these directives or created these offices over time, each with their own press office, their own Freedom of Information Act activity. I mean, there does need to be a serious look at duplication and redundancies in some of these activities. I mean, that is what's taking place, but I think maybe more of that has got to take place.